job with others before this hospitalization, but he soon grasped that mentioning it would get a rise out of anyone, and he was going to milk it for as many laughs as he could. During the hospital stay, Nate proceeded to chat with the ICU nurse about HIV, the orthopedic surgeon about syphilis, and to my chagrin, with the hospital chaplain about chlamydia. I would discover later that this behavior is a common phenomenon among the children of my colleagues. My boss's daughter wrote her college admissions essay about syphilis conversations over Shabbat dinner, while her son told his friend's parents that my mom works in the sex industry. She's the chief of the Division of STD Prevention at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, but I suppose that's close enough. As I watched my son's antics from his bedside, seeds of thought started to germinate in my mind. At the time of his accident in 2015, I had been working in the field of public health and STI research for 8 years since completing my residency. STIs such as syphilis, gonorrhea, and chlamydia had been on the rise since 2000. Infections such as human papillomavirus, HPV, were so common, nearly every sexually active person would be infected at some point during their lives. But even with the ubiquity of STIs, I knew that most people, even healthcare providers, simply don't feel comfortable discussing them. For most of us, having sex is much easier than talking about sex, especially its least pleasant consequences. Yet my son and colleagues' children had no problem talking about sex and STIs. They had become comfortable with the topic before they were old enough to realize that it was an uncomfortable subject for others. During hours of downtime at the hospital with my son, I began to wonder if there was something I could do to make people more at ease discussing STIs. I knew I couldn't be overly ambitious. Some people have a hard enough time discussing STIs with their sexual partners. I couldn't just expect them to bring up the topic with their mail carrier or local barista. Still, if I could spark a larger dialogue among the public about the topic, perhaps it would begin to reduce the stigma behind these ubiquitous infections. By the time my son was discharged from the hospital 4 days later, I had a plan. I would write a book that would weave together storytelling, science, and humor to tell the little-known backstories behind various STIs. I dreamed that people would become so entertained by these tales that the ick factor around STIs might gradually be replaced with a bit of wonder and fascination. Had the accident not happened, I would have done the sensible thing and waited until my kids left for college to write a book. I would not have started the process with one newly invalid kid and another still in diapers. Still, there's nothing like a little trauma to provide one with a foreshortened sense of the future. The accident, in addition to an earlier brush with death I'd had during childbirth, made me wonder whether bad karma from a past life had caught up with me. I decided I'd better get writing before lightning could strike again. I soon realized that tackling STI-related stigma would not be easy. The shroud of shame surrounding STIs is as old as the infections themselves. To many, STIs are considered to be God's judgment for the sexually immoral and adulterous. Hebrews chapter 13, verse 4, or punishment for fornication. And if STIs were a punishment, then by default, those afflicted with them should feel guilty. Never mind that STIs can afflict anyone, even someone who's only had sex within the confines of marriage. Despite the stigma, I knew there were fascinating backstories behind my favorite sexually transmitted bugs that might capture people's interest. STIs have represented the interplay between sex and society as far back as the 1500s, when links between prostitution and disease outbreaks were first established. During the 1800s, prominent artists from Beethoven to Van Gogh suffered neurologic effects of syphilis that influenced their personalities and iconic works. More recently, STIs have played key but hidden roles in everything from World War II to the growth of the internet to The Bachelor. STIs are also destined to remain part of our future. In 2019, the number of STIs reported by the CDC hit historic highs and are continuing to climb. The threat of multi-drug resistance looms large for bacteria such as gonorrhea and Mycoplasma genitalium. There are viruses such as Ebola or Zika that we only recently discovered as STIs, which can linger in the semen for weeks or even months. Who knows what's next? We can't predict when another STI might emerge, but be assured something is coming, and we better be ready when it does. Strange Bedfellows is my attempt to explore the role of STIs in our past, present, and future. It is a journey that goes from the microscopic clashing of two human microbiomes during sex to the big picture of sexual networks, appreciating the influence that just a few players have over the sexual health of the many. We'll meander through the twists and turns of real people's sex lives and debunk common wisdom about STIs. You'll meet my dear colleagues, a scrappy bunch of scientists.